All right. Good morning. I would like to call this meeting to order. As this is a virtual meeting, roll call and voting will be conducted by individually calling the name of each board member. So this is President Amanda Wade, who is present here. Please respond following board members with present when your name is called. Vice President Tiffany Schultz.
Present.
Board member Anna Van Hook.
Present.
Board member Sarah Jarman.
Present.
And board member Scott Glover.
Present.
Next, we're going to go to the approval of the agenda. Whoever offers this second, please state your name and your second after the motion. I motion to approve the agenda.
Second by Scott Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Please state your vote when your name is called. Vice President Tiffany Schultz.
Yay.
Board member Anna Van Hook.
Yes.
Board member Sarah Jarman.
Yay.
Board member Scott Glover.
Yay.
And myself, Amanda Wade's vote is yay as well. Motion carries 5-0. This brings us to our singular action item, approval of land sale, lease, or exchange recommendation. At this time, I'm going to turn to Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore, are you here?
Hopefully he hasn't been talking for a minute.
I mean, I would assume
he's having technical difficulties, so
Okay.
we'll get IT to help him, or you can move
We're
to
heading
this
over to
office.
Tyler right now.
Okay.
Well,
you.
considering any questions or comments we might have, we would also want Mr. Moore to be able to answer them. So we can, stare at each other's faces for the 30 seconds it's going to take to do that.
It'll work for a little bit, but then it'll stop.
We
Can you
can
hear
hear
me now?
you. Yes, we can. Go ahead, Mr.
All
Moore.
right. Sorry about that. So again, President Wade, members of the board, I just wanted to remind the board of this topic and the conversations we had regarding this topic. So this topic is not new. We discussed this first in April 1st when I presented the capital plan for the district for fiscal year 26. We talked about the lack of capital funds and the decreasing, which is oriented and associated with the decreasing enrollment with the district, and looking at alternative revenue sources to support our capital needs with, again, the bond continuing to fail within our district. We again reviewed a specific land presentation on April 22nd, where we specifically talked about this parcel that is in question on the agenda today, and the opportunity that we have to utilize it to bring in additional revenue to the district. Then again, on May 13th, we discussed the land resolution. At that time, I did not have answers for Ms. Van Hook and the questions that she associated, which is bringing us to today, in which we tabled that resolution on May 13th. And today, due to the election schedule and the timeline, we are having this virtual meeting today because the next meeting, June 10th, is after the deadline for the elections council or elections team to add this potential ballot question to our November 26th ballot. So with that, if there's any questions, we also have our elections council on the call with Jim Gill. So,
Are there any questions or comments from the board at this time?
Yes, I do have questions. Will this be done under statute 151102 or 151105?
This is Jim Gill with Gus Rosenfeld, the district's election counsel. The statutes that were just referenced, 1102 and 1105, go to how the proceeds for any sale or lease are used. We looked at statute 15491 for the authority to conduct an election to allow the sale or lease or exchange of district property. So it's 15491 that we rely on for the authority.
I understand that, but my concern is being able to allow the public to understand how those funds will be used. So based on what is decided, each statute provides different type of use for the money. So for the sake of transparency, are we going to allow the public to know whether it's under 1102 or 1105 so that they understand how the proceeds would be used?
Oh, we cover that we don't refer to a statute, but what we say in the ballot question is, just read off the portion that governs the use of the proceeds. Use all or a portion of the proceeds of any sale, lease, or exchange to purchase school sites and or construct, improve, equip, and furnish school buildings, including technology, to purchase student transportation vehicles and or any other permitted capital expenditure. So we feel like that provides the maximum flexibility for the use of the proceeds, with the idea that if and when this parcel is sold or leased, the district at that point with the then current board can make decisions as to how the proceeds will as to how the parcel will be disposed of and how the proceeds will be used. I've done a number of these site sale elections over the past 10 years, about 15 or so for schools around the valley, around the state. And we never get into that sort of granular level of detail in elections because we just don't want to tie the hands, especially in a volatile real estate market where we don't know, just like we don't know what your interest rate is going to be when we go to the voters, when we request bonds, we set a maximum rate that we can't exceed. Similarly here, we set some parameters on what can be done with the proceeds, but we're not saying exactly what will be done because who knows what the market's going to be in 2026 or thereafter when it's actually being sold or leased. So that's been the model we've followed for decades now. We've never been challenged on that legally, so I don't expect that a plaintiff could come forward and challenge the election. I don't expect that the state would come forward and challenge it, or the county. So I feel like we're in solid ground using kind of our tried and true method of site sale election question, ballot question.
Okay. Yeah, my concern is the transparency issue. We're kind of leaving it open-ended for the community to kind of give this wide range of options instead of the community being able to say exactly what they agree to. And I'm concerned that we're spending a lot of money to put this on the ballot. And because of the clarity issue for the community, that possibly end up being rejected due to that issue. And I read your responses back to my concerns from the board meeting, and I understand that statutorily it might not require us to separate the issue, but in reality the statute specifies that, you know, an election called for that purpose, and we're combining the purposes into one ballot measure, which isn't providing, again, the community to say what they would like us to do, whether it's to lease, sell, or trade. And again, based on the options that are selected, the money is spent differently by statute. That tells us how we can spend that money, whether it's M&O or capital. But it looks like you're saying that our intention is only for capital use. Did I understand that correctly?
No, that wasn't my point. I was trying to make it clear that the current language keeps it flexible, that if it's a sale under current statute, the monies would largely be used for capital. But if it's a lease, which is where a lot of districts are these days, perhaps not yours, but most districts that are disposing of property now are aiming toward leases because they desperately need operating dollars. So the ballot language that's before the board today makes no predetermination on that point. We allow for any eventuality under then current law. So whatever law would be in effect next year or thereafter. So we're purposefully not putting the district or the board in a box. We're just allowing the ultimate flexibility, which is our general approach to elections. I do understand that every district is different, and your district may have particular needs, but like I said earlier, we haven't been challenged or really even questioned on the current language. We've not had someone say, well, we need more specificity on how we're going to use the sale or lease proceeds, or perhaps that we want a sale question and a separate lease question. That's never come up on my radar. Not to say that we couldn't do it. I think that would be perfectly legal to do separate ballot questions. We just haven't done so in the past, nor have we been asked to. It would cost a little more to have a second ballot question on there, or perhaps even a third if you wanted to include the exchange option. Just because the county would charge more for that. But that's been my approach, and like I said, we haven't had an issue with it, because I think ultimately we're in a single subject, which is the disposition of district property.
Yeah, and in the past, the issue within the district has been the fact that there is no specificity as far as how those funds will be used, where the community wants to know up front, how will this money be used? The other issue is I thought that there wouldn't be additional expense because it is a mail-in ballot.
Well, Mr. Moore could certainly check with the county on that, but I can't imagine that they wouldn't charge a little more. I mean, for a second question, just because it would be additional, it would be more a longer ballot, more typeface, if you will, perhaps an extra piece of paper in there. I don't know exactly, but we could find that out for sure.
Okay,
but
yeah,
I do know for our districts that do kind of what you see as the typical second question, like you were already planning on, because you're already doing an override election, and then to put the site sale on, there's certainly a second, an extra expense for that site sale. So now if we're doing a third, perhaps, question, so one sale, one lease, and one override, then I gotta imagine the county's that's gonna be reflected in what you're gonna pay the county to some degree, but I don't know what that number would be.
Okay, yeah, that was a question I had brought up during a previous meeting, and it was mentioned that because it's mail-in, there wouldn't be additional expense for that. So it would be nice to get some clarification on that. And I know that the recommendation from Mr. Moore was initially for a lease. So I don't understand that if the recommendation is for a lease, then why we're not just going with that one option. And in your response, you had mentioned that, let me find your response. The 151102 doesn't require an election, but it does require an election if we do have a lease of at least 20 years or more. So based on the term of a lease, it would require voter approval. Also, my concern with a lease is, we're getting now into the business of real estate and we're in the business of education. And so then we have issues as far as, do we have staff that's knowledgeable enough to be managing, overseeing, property? What is the benefit to the community? And I know Mr. Moore mentioned that possibly a multifamily housing project, and based on how this is going to benefit the district also determines how the money can be used. Do we know what that looks like? And I also had asked as far as an estimate of monthly revenue that we could potentially see from a lease. And we weren't able to get that information. And we're told that this has to be approved before any of that negotiation can happen. But there are companies out there that do kind of a pro forma type of evaluation to determine, based on market value, what that would look like.
President Wade, Member Van Hook, I can answer some of those questions. So with regards to the sale, lease, or exchange question, and including all language, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gill, but once you have authority or voter approval to sale or lease, that authority is permanent. And so if we were to pass a resolution and the voters were to approve this resolution with all three verbiage, it would give us and the board the ultimate authority at a later time or now to exercise each one of those options. So again, it gives the board that authority. And again, it's a timing issue with regards to what makes sense for the district at a certain time. In regards to the lease, we have there's a couple leases out there. Kyrene has one with an industrial warehouse property, and they get about $700,000 a year in revenue. And so I've explained to the board and the public many times that we are currently making lease payments of our own to the tune of $3.5 million, and any additional revenue that we would generate would be prudent of us to offset that lease payment, which would open up more operational dollars for teacher salaries increases, et cetera. So that is one of my main goals as the CFO, is to try to reduce that current lease burden that the district's under. And by leasing a vacant piece of land that district owns, that we would be generating revenue to reduce that burden and ultimately put more money back in our classrooms.
President Wade, may I?
Go ahead, sir.
All right, I just want to reiterate, we are following the law here by asking voters permission to do so as required to law to dispose, sell, or exchange or lease land. If we don't, I don't understand putting the cart before the horse. If we don't like the terms of the disposition of the land or whatever it is, we don't have to do anything with us. Can you just, Mr. Gill, confirm that statement, please?
Yes, good point. This is, if you approve this in its present state, all you're asking the voters to do is do their part and approve it in November. If they do so, then next year or in the future, it will come back to the board, this board or a future board, for how what the administration's ultimate recommendation is as to any disposition, if at all. I mean, to Tyler's point, this provides the ultimate flexibility. The only correction I would add is, although the authority to sell or exchange is perpetual, if the voters approve, the authority to lease expires after 20 years. So still ample time to do something. And some districts have taken advantage of that. We've had clients who have waited 10 years until the conditions were right in both the real estate market and at the district itself to act on sale, lease, or exchange question, and ultimately leased some property. Some boards have the mindset that any district property is kind of their birthright, and they want to do whatever they can to hold on to it. So a lease makes sense to them, even if it's long-term. 50 years plus. Ultimately, they'll get it back at some point, and they can do it. If the district's needs change at that point, they can build a school or dispose of it again. So,
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's the law. Thanks.
President Wade, Mr. Moore, now in a situation of a lease, how do we foresee the district managing that as far as qualified staff to, I mean, do we become a management, property management business? Like who do you foresee managing this project? And we don't have qualified staff at the district that's involved in real estate management. So then are we going to then have to spend money to hire dedicated staff? How do you foresee that looking?
Yeah, President Wade, member Van Hook. We would, yeah, you're right. We're not qualified. We're not real estate individuals. We do manage, 16 schools across the district, but with regards to real estate with multifamily, et cetera, we would hire that out or contract that out as a part of that lease agreement. That is something that I would encourage the board to do. Yeah, it would hurt some of our revenue. So, for example, if total lease opportunity for maybe a proposal on that land is 700,000, but it costs us 100,000 to contract out somebody to run that. That's still a net benefit of 600,000 to the district. So I still think the pros outweigh the cons of some of the overhead that may be brought upon the district with a lease. And that's just my 2 cents.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I also, at the last, correction, Mr. Moore, might not have been the May 13th. It may have been the April 22nd. That land currently is vacant. There is nothing on that land. We're not getting anything from it. We still have to maintain that land. So there is still costs to the land just existing as well. And so I'm appreciative of the fact that right now as a district, we are doing everything we can to listen to and respond to not only the needs that we have in order to maintain running the district that we have and continuing to improve upon ourselves and provide the best opportunity for our students to continue to improve upon Higley, but we are also doing what we can to try to respond to the fact that we didn't pass a bond twice. And so the idea that we're looking at other things, it was previously that I think it was board member Van Hook talked about selling that land off in order to gain revenue. I'm appreciative to the fact that this would be an annual income, whereas if we sold that land, I think it was like 7 million is what we'd get at the current. If we're making revenue off it each year in terms of property value and the lease and all of that, I'm appreciative of the options that we have created and the benefit that that is to the district to looking towards ways of increasing our revenue, not at the cost of our constituents. So I think, at least from my perspective, the idea of putting forth this proposal and looking at the options that we have and setting everything up to where it's in the best interest of the district overall, at least from the way that I look at it, is responding to all of the needs that not only our district has, but our community has expressed as well.
President Wade, Mr. Moore, can you tell me what the cost of maintaining the vacant land currently is as far as weed whacking weeds?
Yeah, Member Van Hook, we use our current landscaping crew to maintain that land, so I would estimate probably 50 to 100 maybe man hours out of the year. And so it's really just taking our landscaping crew away from our schools to maintain that land right now. So,
but the maintenance is very minimal considering it's just getting rid of weeds.
Sure. Yeah, I would agree.
Okay. Thank you. My concern again with the lease is just our purpose is education and not property management necessarily, even though yes, we manage all of our school district properties, but going into property management as far as housing and things like that, that's a whole different ball game. Now, I know you said that there was somebody interested as far as a multi-family housing project. Do you know if that's going to be like affordable housing or what that would look like?
President Wade, Member Van Hook, I've entertained conversations, but I haven't had any deep conversations because of the fact I didn't want to be thoughtful of my time. And also that we have no voter authority to lease or sell that land right now. So
yeah, I have concerns about voting on something when we don't have full information on what exactly is going to happen. And my concerns, obviously, we saw the issues that we had with the middle school leases and all the trouble that came along with that. And then also the recent bill that passed with the stadium now being on taxpayer dime. That bill passed and now the stadium wants $500 million for repairs. Like, what prevents that from happening to us when we lease the land and then they come back and say, well, we're not going to extend the lease unless you now pay for all these repairs. And now the district is responsible for covering millions of dollars of repairs in order to continue business in the lease.
President Wade.
Go ahead, Mr. Glover.
Thank you. I just want to be clear of where I'm sitting here. We haven't decided anything either way. Our obligation as a board, according to state statute, is to pass a budget. So when the time comes, speaking for myself, and if other board members think differently, then please speak up. But when it comes time to make that decision, if I'm convinced that the proposal to dispose of this property makes sense for our community and for our school district, then I will vote for it. If it does not, then I won't. But we won't know that until after this issue passes.
President Wade.
Go ahead, Mr. Irvin.
Yes, if President or Mr. Moore, if you could kind of clarify with the lease option, is there inflation in those payments? If we do nail down a lease, in general, those contracts have inflated, so we would go with the market, right, for those payments?
yeah, President Wade, Mr. Arman, typically, so again, the one lease structure that I have reviewed with regards to Kyrene, it does have like a 3% inflation adjustment annually. And there's definitely provisions in the agreement that prevent things, like Ms. Van Hook mentioned, for the district being on the hook for certain expenses that are not related to the district's business. So there's things in that agreement. But to Mr. Glover's point, that is the second iteration. I think the first question at hand with this resolution is asking the voters and the taxpayers if they're interested in a sale, lease, or exchange of this property, and then bringing back those options to the board to approve. Ultimately, I'm not approving a lease. This is not approving a lease right now. We are approving the resolution for the question to ask our voters to sell, lease, or exchange this land. And then we can talk about how we want to go about the process of leasing, and we can do community meetings like I've done to discuss this and involve our taxpayers in some of these decisions. And then ultimately the board, like Mr. Glover said, will be the ultimate approver of said lease or sale of land. But the first step is really, we've identified this piece of land as a potential revenue source. And we statutorily, as Mr. Gill said, the next step is to have our taxpayers give us authority to proceed with a sale, lease, or exchange of this land. So,
okay, and even if we got that authority, we could technically just sit on the decision, so it doesn't make our decision rash.
Yeah, Ms. Garman. Yeah, Mr. Gill stated you have, and again, I apologize, I misspoke about the lease authority, but you have 20 years of authority if this passes to lease you have a lot forever to sell or exchange. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Gill, but there's no urgency after this passes to rush a decision. So we can take our time and thoughtfully involve our community in the next steps of this process.
Okay, good. And then also, are we paying tax on that property? Do you know what that property tax is? And I've also heard in some, sometimes we can pass that on to the leasing, but we can approach that topic later. But I just wondered if you knew what the taxes were that the district pays as well.
President Wade, Member Jarman, we are tax exempt. We do not pay property taxes as our revenue is generated from property taxes. So it'd be like paying ourselves. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much for clarifying.
Go ahead, Ms. Schultz.
President Wade, Mr. Chairman, then this vote, we don't even know if we will be the board to vote on, because we don't know what the market looks like in the future. We don't know what's going to happen in November. We don't know if a sale or a lease or whatever it makes sense. As Mr. Glover said, then if at the time comes, then it makes sense for us to sell the land or lease the land, then we would do what's best for the district at that time. The only thing we're voting for this morning is to give the authority to do so, should we decide to do so at that time. And it will have to go through all the due process, as Mr. Moore mentioned as well.
Yeah. Perfect.
President Wade, my only concern is just leaving it open-ended. I'm all for, figuring out. I've had conversations with Mr. Moore as far as determining, ways that we could bring in additional revenue, but leaving it open-ended for the community and spending thousands of dollars for the ballot measure. My concern is, because it's open-ended, that the community would reject that without knowing exactly what the district is going to do in the future.
Okay. So with that, at least it seems as if nobody else has any further questions or comments. Whoever offers the second, again, please state your name and your second after I motion. I motion to consider, discuss, amend if desired, and if deemed advisable, to adopt a resolution ordering and calling a special election to be held in and for the district and authorizing the sale, lease, or exchange of district property.
This is Scott Glover, and I will second that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Glover. Please state your name, or sorry, please state your vote when your name is called. Vice President Tiffany Schultz.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Go ahead.
Okay. Yay, Tiffany Schultz.
Thank you, Ms. Schultz. Board Member Anna Van Hook.
Unfortunately, due to the reason of leaving a open-ended ballot measure at this time, I cannot support that. And with that, I vote nay.
Board Member Sarah Jarman.
With the potential of passive income and feedback from the community, and an opportunity for community questions and such, I am voting yay to give this opportunity to support the district more financially. It makes fiscal sense to me.
Board Member Scott Glover.
Yay.
Amanda Wade, my vote is also yay. This measure passes 4-1. I motion to adjourn this meeting.
I shall second that, Mr. Glover.
I'm going to go to Glover just because he was louder, Schultz. I'm going to give that to Mr. Glover as well for the second. Thank you. Please state your name, or sorry, please state your vote when I call your name. President Schultz on the motion to adjourn.
Vice President Schultz. You're the
Vice President Schultz, my bad, the title.
Yeah, yay.
Okay. Board Member Anna Van Hook.
Yay.
Board Member Sarah Jarman.
Yay.
Board Member Scott Glover.
Yay.
And my vote is also yay. Motion to adjourn passes 5-0. Meeting adjourned. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.